Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first Urban Fellows Program webinar. As you know, we'll be hosting a series of webinar every Tuesday and Thursday till 13th of April. This is an opportunity for you to meet some of our faculty, hear about the course and the curriculum, and also meet some of our past and current fellows and hear about their experiences. Thank you for those who have joined us today. As you know, the applications have already started and the deadline is 11th April. So please do submit on time. So today's speaker is Sudeshna Mitra. Sudeshna is faculty here at IIHS. She also teaches as part of the UFP, and she'll be talking to you about the Urban Fellows program today. Sudeshna will take about 20-25 minutes to talk to you about the course, and then you can drop in your questions in the Q&A box and we'll take them up. Over to you, Sudeshna.
Thank you so much, Tanvi. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm really happy to sort of see that just as soon as we sort of started, we got over 30 participants that sort of registered immediately. So like I said, like a warm welcome. And what I'm going to do today during the webinar is actually give you a little bit of an introduction to what the program is about. The part where I speak, I will try and keep it as short as possible, about 20 minutes, where I want to cover a couple of things. And after that, I'm going to open it up to question and answer sessions. So whatever you have further questions on or things that I might not have spoken about, please put those questions down in the Q&A boxes that are there. That's there at the bottom of your screen. And I will take them up one by one. Okay, and I'll elaborate on the program a little bit more depending on what questions you ask as well. So just a very quick sort of introduction. My name is Sudeshna Mitra, and as Tanvi said, I am faculty here. I've been at IIHS for a while now, and have been part of sort of putting the program together and teaching in the program over the last 5 years. So we have actually, this last batch will be the 5th year of the program. And so with this new application cycle, we are looking to sort of welcome the 6th batch in, right? So it's there's been a lot of learning through the process. So very quickly, the Urban Fellows program is basically the flagship teaching program that we have at IIHS. Many of you may be already familiar with the work that the Indian Institute for Human Settlements does. It works on a whole set of urban issues, ranging from housing to infrastructure to energy to finance to land, disaster risk resilience, a whole set of things that are happening. There are many public events that happen at IIHS as well, and I hope that some of you have attended some of those. Now, as a part of this larger ecosystem of what happens at IIHS and the work and the research that happens on the urban across all these different disciplinary categories, we decided to sort of craft a teaching program, which is a full-time program over a 9-month period, which is an immersive program. So it's a residential program. So you have to, if you want to attend the program, if you get admission to the program, then you will be in Bangalore, and the classes will be held in the IIHS City campus. And they are the program will include in-class teaching. So you will have classes, you will work on the site, on the field. There is almost sort of a 50% sort of a component of the program, which is field-based learning. You will also work on live research and practice projects that are happening at IIHS, and get the chance to work directly with various clients or various grant organizations that are interested in particular kind of urban questions. And there are various kinds of research and practice projects that are speaking directly to an external audience. So you get a chance to kind of figure out what you want to do in your work life in the urban going forward. It also includes a mandatory 2-month internship in a whole set of organizations that work on urban issues. And this includes public and government bodies. This includes private sector, organizations, from consultancies to like across like various kinds of consultancies that are out there, to civil society groups, to grounded sort of citizen-based groups that are working on various kinds of issues, community participation through using community participation methods, etc. So this is across basically sectors and across this kind of a public-private civil society spectrum. And over the years, we've sort of built out a very, sort of a big network around organizations that are interested in working on urban issues, who work with IIHS, who now have UFP alumni working for them. So that list and that network is growing every year. And, so that kind of like ties in with the program, the 2-month internship that you do at the end of the program. So that's sort of the overall picture of the program itself. So just to kind of just repeat, it's a 9-month, fully residential, fully immersive program, which includes a 2-month internship program, which is mandatory. Right? Now, let me speak a little bit more about what we had in our minds when we kind of came up with this program. So one of the things that many of us have been working, like the faculty, as well as like there are researchers and practitioners in IIHS as well. And we've been working there's a whole number of years of sort of experience across the building, across various things. And the common sort of the value that we sort of hold is that you may have your own disciplinary expertise and may look at a particular kind of a challenge that's happening in an urban area. Say you're an energy expert, you're looking at what kind of fuels, what kind of energy cycles, what kind of consumption, production, etc. is tied up into urban systems. But when you actually do work in that field, you realize that you need more than just your disciplinary expertise. You need to work with people who are from lots of different disciplinary backgrounds, who also care about that urban issues and whose expertise and methods and techniques are also very important to actually intervene in the problem, because these problems are complex. So what we do, so the program came from that kind of a sort of a experiential learning that we have all sort of come through in our own working lives. And we realize that there is the programs that are talking about urban issues that are there that are there overall. Many of them have certain kind of disciplinary silos. So we wanted to kind of create a program which would bring in people from lots of different disciplinary backgrounds. But what will hold them together is their interest to work on urban issues. And this program is actually designed to be an interdisciplinary program, which will allow people to, from across different disciplines, understand the urban in a more holistic and step back a little and understand all the complexities and the different layers that go into making an urban area. And then also learn to work in teams that have people. You can have a legal expert, you can have someone with a management background and a planning background, and somebody who's a sociology major, somebody who comes from an arts or a media kind of a background, and come together as a team to actually kind of address these very wicked urban problems. And when I use the word wicked, it basically means that there are many layers that are sort of intervening with each other. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk through one example. You have all heard this sort of a demographic analysis of what the urban means to India right now, especially post-liberalization, right? More than a third of the country lives in urban areas. And are dependent on these urban areas. That's a significant number because we are a very sort of a demographically like a large country. But even beyond that, last year, the news and the media stories brought it home to us on screens in every person's sort of a living room, even if they were not aware of these issues earlier, is that there are many more people, when people started walking back home to their villages, that there are the urban, footprint that is there on this country is actually much larger than any of the official statistics managed to capture, right? A lot of people are traveling. The urban, various kinds of urban are second homes, third homes, fourth homes for them, and there are cycles of migration. There is a huge amount of rural production that depends on urban consumption. There are entire sort of regions around cities which have complex relationships with cities in terms of people going back and forth, about networks of energy, of food, of waste, of money that's flowing through, of land. So when we say the urban, it's actually not just this kind of a clear sort of a boundary that you can put on a map and there are all these circles that are urban areas inside the country. The urban is actually a very integral part of India's overall development story right now, right? And the kind of challenges that urban areas pose are incredibly complex. So, right, like let's look at, for example, I mean, last year brought up a whole set of questions. I don't even want to sort of focus so much on just those. But take something that was, in the news even before, like say air pollution in Delhi. Now, if you want to sort of understand and tackle the kind of question that's, that is there with sort of the air quality in urban areas, you not only have to sort of understand, that there are so many cars on the road. You also have to understand what is happening in the rural hinterland of the city with, crops, the stubble of the crops getting burnt. You have to understand, natural systems of geology, of weather, of climate, of rainfall. In the city, you have to understand things like what are not just like how many cars are there on the road, but about transportation sort of more holistically. What kind of public transportation, what kind of private transportation options do people have? What is the geography of the city in terms of where people live and where they are going to work? Why has that geography become the way it is? Like, what kind of land use patterns and what histories are associated with those land use patterns emerging? You have to understand about energy systems and fuels that are powering our cities, right? You have to talk. So what we're talking about then is we don't just need planners and engineers and transportation experts. We absolutely need them. But we also need energy experts. We also might need economists. We might need people with a finance background, somebody who has a management background, somebody who comes from, who's a sociology major, whose work looks at the socioeconomic factors that are, shaping work patterns, shaping travel patterns in the city. You may be someone who has a background in art, culture, media, communications, and you may be required to create an awareness and an embedding of the layers of knowledge about this problem and embed them in people's everyday lives, so they become aware of the problem, they become aware of the kind of, what are the implications, the choices they make. You might have to design, like, various kinds of communication strategies to get people on board, to kind of get them to also understand and agree with sort of the step forward. Because if you just kind of make a plan or a policy sitting in an office somewhere, it is not going to have any effect on the city. This is why things don't get implemented, right? There is a lot between sort of coming up with a strategy or coming up with a plan and then all of the work that is required for it to incrementally become part of a new urban structure, a new set of urban processes, a new set of urban stakeholders. So this, I mean, I'm just kind of giving you an example to sort of highlight that just as disciplinary expertise, all of these different people that I talked about, the disciplinary expertise is absolutely essential to kind of solve the problem. It also requires each one of these disciplinary experts to acknowledge, appreciate, understand the kind of interdisciplinary teams and the kind of interdisciplinary vocabulary that they have to have some level of comfort with. They have to know that this language exists. This is how an economist thinks about it. This is someone who works with finance and Excel sheets. This is how they would think about it. This is how a person who works on media would be able to, sort of create this kind of a change. So that's what the UFP is really about. Part of the trigger for us to kind of come up with this program came from a lot of organizations that we were working with at IIHS. And they told us that, people come and they're very smart, they're very intelligent, and they come in and they join the organization, but it takes them 2 or 3 years to really understand how things actually happen. And what we, and they said that, that it would be fantastic if there would be some kind of a discussion of that as a part of the educational program itself that people were being trained in. And in some ways, the UFP is sort of, designed to kind of take those first 2 or 3 years that you would in an office, in an organization or government body anywhere. And the kind of the knowledge that is almost sometimes hard to articulate, to pin down and say, this is that X factor that I learned. But to gain that language, that maturity, and that sort of a holistic, a little bit of a, to be able to understand the problem more holistically through an interdisciplinary sort of a way. That's kind of, what the UFP is about. So in terms of so how do we do this? In the first sort of 3.5 months, you will have a commons semester. A common semester has 6 different layers to it, right? So you have social identity, planning in the urban, infrastructure, urban economy, urban sustainability, all sort of taught in conjunction with each other. There are various kinds of projects, exercises that will force you to work in teams that are comprised of different disciplinary backgrounds and to produce outputs that incorporate all of these kind of different disciplinary, elements in what you are sort of coming up with. In the commons, you will also have almost 50% of your time on the field in something that's called the practica, where you will be able to apply a lot of things that you're hearing in class and sort of take it onto the field and learn from there. In the second semester, it's called the elective semester. We usually offer a sort of a larger set of choices between 9 and 12. And you have 4 rounds of it. So you basically, in every cycle, you choose from about 2 or 3 different options that are there. And so at the end, you take 4 electives during the elective semester. At the same time you work in the elective semester, you work on live projects at IIHS. These are research projects and practice projects. And the third semester is basically the internship semester. So we set you up with organizations where there is an alignment with what you are interested in, the kind of disciplinary trainings that you have, your interest in whether you want to push that a little bit, move into slightly different sectors, or you want to stay with it, or you want to move to something completely different. So we align it with that in terms of internship that you do. And we use the internship as a way to kind of set it up so that you can, move on to a final placement. You learn about what that world of work looks like. Right? So that's the overall sort of structure of the program. I'll go quickly into who can apply. So I'm hoping that all of this setup has sort of made it very clear that you can be from any disciplinary background, you can apply. The minimum requirement is basically that you have a bachelor's degree in particular discipline or a master's degree and a few years of experience. We also actually, on a case-to-case basis for very meritorious candidates, also accept people who only actually have a formal 10+2, education, and for life, conditions have not been able to actually pursue, an undergraduate degree, but have a tremendous amount of experience in working on the urban. They have a different kind of a knowledge system that they bring to it. So on a case-to-case basis, we look at those candidates as well. And the only other criteria that we have is that you have to be of Indian citizenship and you have to be under the age of 30. And that's there on the website, the exact date. So take a look at that. I'll close with sort of repeating what Tanvi just said, that the applications are now open. The online application is the first stage of the process. It's going to stay open till 11th April. There are various sections to the application, and you do have to write about your experiences, about yourself, about your interest in the urban in quite a bit of detail. So this is not one of those checkbox kind of forms that you pick up and you sort of fill on the last day. So please take your time, start this early. You can continue to save without submitting over a period of time, but start working on it early. It basically means that you can have better answers. We get a lot of applications every year. So it makes the difference if you put the effort and try and sort of really project what you are about. Because what we are looking for is this curiosity about the urban, the wanting to work in an interdisciplinary environment. You may have already worked on urban studies, then like possible trajectories of various kind of fellows that we have over here is they have some sort of an urban degree already, but there is something missing that they have found. They're not either, like, the course that they've taken is left them wanting. When they have started work, they have realized that it's not enough. I wish this was like, why did we not talk about this, for example, when we were like studying? So there's a lot of people who are sort of looking to kind of push the envelope on urban questions. And these are actually the kind of people that we want, who are willing to go outside their comfort zones, who want to learn the vocabulary from other disciplinary backgrounds. You don't have to become, like, a legal person doesn't have to become an economist. That's never going to happen. But legal person being familiar with like certain economic concepts and knowing that when somebody is talking about this, they're not like in a complete fog, that helps. The acknowledgement that I need someone with that kind of a background on my team helps. It goes a long way towards creating solutions that are sustainable, because we're now sitting at the end of a century, the beginning of a new century, where a lot of work has happened in disciplinary silos, and we see the effects of it today, where unintended outcomes, unintended effects and methods and short-sightedness has crept into interventions. And it is time to sort of step back, think more holistically, think more long-term, think more sustainably in this era of climate change. And this is our small effort to kind of, prepare a group of people to sort of ask those questions in that different way. So I'm going to stop now and I'm going to take your questions.
So Sudeshna, there are a few questions on the Q&A box and some in the chat box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them out. I can see a few questions which are similar in nature, so I'll just clump them.
Sure.
A generic question that we are getting is around the work experience. A, is work experience essential? And can fresh graduates or fresh postgraduates without any work experience apply for the program?
So yes, absolutely, you can apply to the program. Every year we have almost 30 to 40% of our class comprising of fresh graduates, like either fresh, like who just finished their undergraduate degree or their bachelor's degree or their master's degree, but have not had, sort of work experience, no formal work experience. They might have done internships or voluntary work somewhere, become involved with something that's happening in their neighborhood, but that aside. So work experience is definitely not mandatory. As long as you fulfill the age criteria, the citizenship criteria, and can tell us why are you interested in the urban, what is about this program that is drawing you to it. To be very honest, that is the only eligibility. In some ways all the others are like sort of logistics, but that's what's going to actually sort of we pay most attention to, your interest in the urban.
There's a question regarding the statement of purpose and what are the critical aspects that we are looking for in an SOP.
So, I mean, it will be a repetition of a lot of things that I've said so far. So I'll keep it short, but basically in the SOP, we are interested in understanding your personal trajectory, how you got interested in urban questions, what kind of things make you curious, make you uncomfortable, things that you want to pursue, how you want to pursue them, your curiosity, your motivation, your dedication. That's really what we are sort of looking for in our statement of purpose, which is not just sort of abstract that I care about the climate because, you know, it's something that I should care about, or there is a lot of traffic on the roads and I think it's terrible and I want to do something about it, or there is garbage on the roads. Like, not like that, not that kind of like, oh, I looked out of my window and I saw something, you know, and I want to write about it. We want to see engagement. We want to see that you really care about this topic, that you have done your homework, you have read, even if it's newspapers, and are familiar with what is the kind of discussions that's going on over there, and you really want to work on this topic, and you're coming at it with some level of like, that I am going to be a future professional in this area. And so even if I'm like a full fresher right now, I am still a curious person who reads up on this topic and I know and I understand this topic, right? So that's what the SOP really is about.
There are a few questions on the batch intake and the size of the cohort.
So our cohort size is, it goes up and down, but it's about between 30 and 40. That's the size of the batch that we hold to. Anything less doesn't have enough diversity, like because we ask you to kind of work in groups and stuff like that. Anything more and it sort of becomes very hard to kind of give personal attention to people. So it's sort of between 30 and 40. It fluctuates from year to year depending on the applicant pool, but that's the intake.
There's a question on the post-program career aspects and how relevant is it to the development sector, since the person who has asked the question has about 3 years of experience in the rural development.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, like I said a little bit during just when I was introducing the thing, that the way that we kind of approach the urban is very much sort of, you know, within sort of the kind of the development sector, like urban development issues. We have had many fellows who have come with a certain kind of background in the development sector. They have never perhaps thought separately about the urban, but the urban kept coming back to them in some way, either because of a personal interest or because of the issue that they were looking at had a particularly urban characteristic to it, or they are interested in sort of, I mean, the level of the interest in the urban can range from, this is my future interest in the urban because I've done X, so like, you know, I've worked on the rural so till now, but I want to move to the urban for XYZ reasons, or I have worked on sectors that were agnostic to rural and urban, but I'm recognizing the urban as an important place to work. Or people, or the third category of people who've been working on the urban and want to sort of continue in the urban. So I hope that sort of covers. So we've had people with all of these sort of three backgrounds. And to, again, talk about sort of the career opportunities and stuff like that, it is, like I said, it is across sectors. Across sectors, meaning that you can be working on housing, infrastructure, urban culture issues, on, you know, the whole range of sort of sectoral, you know, sort of categories like that. It can also be across the public, private, civil society kind of groups. So if you take a look at, you know, the website itself, we've tried to sort of highlight the diversity of organizations that people have gone on to work in. Which should give you a better sense, but it's also like, it's basically we try and sort of bring in the diversity both in terms of sectoral diversity as well as, you know, sort of the public, private, civil society kind of a spectrum.
So Sudeshna, there are a few questions around the fee structure of the program, and also around the scholarships. Is it a paid course? Are the fellows given stipends? What about accommodation? What about stipend? Can you talk about course fees and scholarships, etc.? So maybe you can just spend some time talking about fee structure or the scholarships. Also, before that, I would just request folks to enter your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. It's just easier to keep a track of all the questions that are coming in there. So,
I also want to ask the person who's been raising their hand for a while to please put your question in the chat box, because we have to kind of follow that logistic of it.
Not the chat box, in the Q&A box.
In the Q&A box, sorry, in the Q&A box. But we will not be able to take your question if you're raising your hand. Please put your question in the Q&A box. Okay, so to speak a little bit about the fee structure. So the fees for the next year's program is 2 lakhs plus GST, right? And this is all inclusive. So all costs that you will have during the program, including like travel expenses. If we have taken batches for exposure visits outside Bangalore, last year we could not because there was a whole lockdown, etc. But this year, if conditions are fine, we will bring that back in. So those costs are covered. Your cost of accommodation is covered as a part of this. So this is an all-inclusive amount that covers all the kind of like course costs that are there. But we also understand that many people who apply to the program come from difficult financial backgrounds, and we want to make this program need blind. What I mean by need blind is that if you get admission, if you make the admission cut, then we will work with you. We will ask you to fill up a separate scholarship form, and you'll have to supply the documents and stuff that go with it. But we make sure that you are like financial considerations don't hold you back from attending the program. So we have a very sort of a robust scholarship program. We also have a stipend. It's all part of that scholarship form, that if it depends, like I said, that every person comes from a different kind of a background, they have a different level of need. So there might be some scholarships towards tuition. There might be some scholarships towards living expenses while you are here at Bangalore. There may be, so, there's different categories inside the scholarship form, and we look at sort of the application form and make sure that if you have got the admission, then let's make it possible for you to attend the program.
Also, just to add, everybody, there's a special webinar next Thursday on admissions, scholarships, and eligibility, which our faculty Neha Sami will be hosting. So if you have very specific and detailed questions, we'll address them during those webinars as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also actually want to address one question. This may or may not be there in the Q&A, but I forgot to talk about this when I was talking. But last year, we actually had to do a blended program. About 2 months of the program was online, and then people came face-to-face and they had in-person classes. We are hoping that going forward in the next year, we will be able to run the entire program as a face-to-face kind of a program. And unless something changes incredibly drastically and we absolutely have to sort of relook at that, that's the sort of the format for next year. It is exactly how it's run in the first 4 years of the program, which is like a face-to-face residential program. You have to be here in Bangalore. So not the blended version that we taught last year.
Yeah, in fact, there was a question that I was going to take, which was, how was the current batch administered with regards to COVID? Will it be completely offline this year? But I think you've addressed that. There are a couple of questions on placement opportunities, and do you guarantee placement?
No, we don't guarantee placement, but we help people. We do a very sort of we work with you. We do a lot of hand-holding to kind of help you transition from an internship to a placements process, but we don't guarantee the placements. But in past years, our fellows have gone on, almost all of them have gone on to, getting very good placements. So, but there is no guarantee.
There's a question.
Is guaranteed. Sorry, Tanvi,
No, I was moving on to the next question. Should I move on?
Yes.
There's a question that says, I'm a doctoral student in urban governance. I do not have any doctoral scholarship, or I'm not being funded by any university. Can I apply for the UFP and scholarship further?
So one of the things about this program is that you can't be doing another academic program on the side. So, I mean, we got one of the questions in Instagram also around this point, that I'm doing a bachelor's and can I do this program alongside? And my sense also is from your question right now is that you are pursuing a PhD program and you want to do this alongside. And frankly, like, the requirement of this program is that there should be no other parallel academic program running. There should be no other parallel work running. So this is a full-time immersive program. People usually have to do, there's not just the classes part. The kind of program that this is we actually required to engage a lot outside class as well. And so it's, if you're distracted by something else going on, we don't believe that you'll be getting the full value of this program out of it. So this has to be a kind of a standalone thing. That said, we have made exceptions once or twice for PhD students who have completed their fieldwork, completed their writing, and are on a year-long sabbatical for some reasons, where they have taken permission from the university to sort of say that I have a sabbatical for this year, either for funding reasons or for other reasons, and that they have pursued the program alongside with that kind of a letter. But that's really a very rare, a very case-to-case kind of a basis, where we have made sure that this person is not going to have other commitments during the same time, and they are fully on a sabbatical and can immerse themselves in the program. So, you know, so that's kind of a larger sort of answer to all the other questions that might be there in this area as well. So I don't think the funding question really sort of comes in at all in this situation. Tanvi? Hi, Tanvi, you are on mute.
Sorry, I think Sudeshna, I got logged off.
Oh, I see. Oh.
Yeah, but that shouldn't have hampered the webinar because you are host as well. So.
Okay. So should we go to the next question? Are there other questions?
Yeah, there's a question about how does this fellowship help a person who wants to pursue a technical, I'm assuming technical course after this. Also, what are the chances for placements after the fellowship? I think you have answered the second part of the question.
Okay, so see, we have had many people with a technical background, lots different sort of fields of engineering who have been part of the program. What I said, however, earlier about an interest in interdisciplinarity, of wanting to do work that's a little bit more holistic, is actually the profile of people for whom this program is designed. So if you are looking for something that is very specifically and only in a sort of a technical program, I would actually say that this is not a good program for you then. There are many good programs that are out there which are focusing on one aspect or the other, right? And so, I would then encourage you to apply to some of those other programs that are out there. But the whole point of this program, the whole value of this program, is how do technical people push their envelope a little bit more? They can continue to do technical work, but with a bigger and a better understanding of what are the other things that are affecting that kind of a technical solution. Who else should be in that conversations? How does, you must have heard the term T4D, technology for development, right? There is a big difference between technology and technology for development. There's a lot more to think about as a part of the T4D model, right? And so if you are interested in sort of the T4D model, then yes, please come to the program, right? And this program is going to prepare you to sort of think a little bit more with other people, from other perspectives, push you a little bit in terms of methods, help you understand your technological, sort of interventions and the way that you're sort of coming up with the program from a sort of a wider perspective. But only if you are interested in that. If you are not, then this program is not for you.
Okay, there's a question. Will any of the internships work in the urban design field for students coming from art, architecture backgrounds, or are they mainly research?
No, I mean, there's a lot of people who kind of go on to do absolutely practice-based stuff in urban design, in architecture. Actually, I would say that there's a smaller percentage of the class that actually, pursue a sort of a research track, and that they might be pursuing it for very specific kinds of purposes, like they're particularly interested in a kind of research, or they're interested in sort of a research trajectory, but they are a minority in the class, the post UFP. Most people who come to the UFP are coming because they want to get involved in different forms of urban practice, and urban design architecture is definitely part of that larger envelope. But just kind of refer back to the answer that I gave in the previous one, that you want to be sort of an architect and only an architect, or if you want to be an urban designer, only an urban designer, then again, it's not a good fit. But if you want to be an urban designer who understands transportation problems, who understands finance questions for a public space that has been created, to understand social identity questions of how caste, class, sort of plays itself out when a public space and how a public space is used, who feels welcome, gender questions, like why do, you might have heard the book, why loiter? Why do women loiter in public spaces? What kind of gaps they have? So if you are interested in sort of pushing the envelope of urban design, think about sociology, think about technology, think about economics, think about finance, then yes, then this program is for you.
There are a couple of similar questions that I'll just read out. It says, one is saying, I'm doing my MBA in distance education. I'm in my second semester currently. Will I be able to do the UFP? Second is, I'm doing an online part-time fellowship with a low time commitment of 2 hours a week. Will my application get rejected because of this?
So, I mean, like I said, that we don't encourage people to have anything else sort of running on the side. And in fact, when you make it to the final stage of the interview, this is a question that we explicitly asked from people, that do you have any other commitments that are going on right now? And there have been maybe like one exception or something because of like a this thing. But typically the answer is that if you have something else going on in parallel, then this is not the program for you. This program does not allow that kind of ability to sort of switch off from it for a few hours or for a weekend or so and sort of go into something else. And I don't want to make it sound scary. It's not like people have incredible amounts of fun. They make friendships for life. They think about this and they talk about this as like, okay, this moment happened in my life. And so I don't think people who have graduated have, after getting some distance, have felt that the immersion kind of feeling that's there in the program has, that they have not been able to cope with it. Nonetheless, when you're going through the program, there is a lot to do. So I hope that sort of answers this range of questions. If you're in a very sort of a short-term kind of a program, put your application in, and that's definitely something that's going to be discussed, and we have to understand that fully in terms of like what's going on. Like you said, 2 hours a week or something like that. We have to really understand what that means. Is that, and like I said, no promises and no guarantees, because we haven't made exceptions like that. Like maybe once or something. Yeah.
So there are a couple of questions on the work sample. One says, any pointers for the work sample which has to be submitted? Somebody has said, can I upload a position paper in sample of work? I'm not sure what that means. Second
so what we're looking from the sample of work is
just one more question, Sudeshna, regarding the sample of work. For someone who has no experience in the urban sector, what should the SOP ideally address? Yeah, these two.
Okay. The second question was about the SOP, not the SOW. Was it?
The second one says, can I upload position paper as sample of work?
Right. And the last one, that if I don't have any experience, then what should I put in my statement of purpose or my sample of work?
Yeah, statement of purpose.
Okay. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the sample of work. So what we want to really kind of use the sample of work is that, writing is one of the ways in which you can communicate and tell us, give us a snapshot of who you are, what are your interests. But various people have a different relationships with writing. Some are extremely good, extremely articulate. Some are forget the words, forget the grammar. We don't look for things like that. But I mean, for a good reason, like don't send the kind of language you use in text messages. Like be careful. I'm not saying that. But you may come from this thing where English is not your first language. You can write in Hindi. We are looking for that enthusiasm, that curiosity, that dedication, that motivation that's there behind the words. But sometimes the essays and the words that are there is one form of communicating. You may have done something incredibly interesting, which can only be sort of, shown through a film that you have made, through an art project that you have done, through a set of pictures about an exhibition or a community participation exercise that you have undertaken. Sample of work can also be text, but we accept text, media, photos, all these different formats. So what we're looking from your sample of work is to get a glimpse into your past history of your interests, of what work you have, and this work doesn't mean that, like some of you asked earlier, that I don't have work experience. That's fine. If you have written something, if you have participated in something that is happening in your neighborhood level, you've been a volunteer somewhere, show us as a part of your sample of work. A sample of work allows you to expand on the essays, tells us a little bit more about yourself, not from the perspective of questions we have asked you, but from the perspective of who you are, right? Like, what if you are somebody who clearly cares about climate change? Show us a sample of work that shows us why, what have you done, how should we understand your interest in climate change? If you're interested in housing, you're interested in livelihoods, like the it's a very broad sort of a requirement from we allow a lot of different things from this sample of work. What we don't accept are CVs. We don't want your CV as a part of your sample of work. We actually want a sample of your work. It's in the words. So not CVs, and not like one picture with no explanation, or a sketch with no explanation of why you're sending that to us as a sample of work. It has to somehow speak to what you have set up to think in your essays. Like there has to be some relationship to your work trajectory, to your personal trajectory in your sample of work. Statement of purpose, I kind of feel like I've answered that question, because like I've been repeating throughout this thing, that we are interested in what you've done so far, but we want to understand your interest in the urban, right? So sometimes it's our work through which we are able to express that this is my interest in the urban. Sometimes it's in the readings that you've done of newspaper. You're following a particular kind of a story in the papers. You have read books that are outside what was assigned to you as a part of your program, in the area that you care about. So in your SOP, bring in these readings, your thought process, right? Like that has what is the trajectory of your thinking about or caring about that particular urban issue. So it helps, like the work experience is one aspect of how you might write your SOP, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be your academic trajectory through which you can identify, or the co-curricular readings or co-curricular activities that you have done, which you can sort of use to tell us in your SOP, tell us about your trajectory in the SOP.
I feel like you addressed these, but there are again questions saying, can the sample of work be unrelated to urban issues? And one says, while we can upload a portfolio, can we put multiple projects within one portfolio?
Yeah, you can definitely put multiple projects in a portfolio. There is a limitation on the overall size of the file, so please be careful about that. About the second question, the thing is that can I put something that is not related to the urban? Yes, you can, if it's a thoughtful, engaged kind of work. Like if you've made a film or worked on community participation. Like there was this one time when somebody sent us this incredibly detailed work that they had done with sort of in the small scale industrial developments that was coming up in sort of this urban rural continuum, this over this highway kind of a region. It was very detailed work, and it was not very clearly, it was not like an urban thing in and of itself, but it was very detailed work. We could see what he was thinking about. We could see that his analysis was there in the way he was presenting this work, and there were photos, there were little write-ups. It was like a report kind of a thing, not like very fancy language and all of that, but you could see that this is an issue that he cared about. So it does not need to be particularly urban, your sample of work. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have also had incredibly silly sort of submissions as a part of sample of work. Sketches that people have made in their notebooks, okay? Or some thoughts that they have written. The less engaged your work is that you give us as a sample of work, the less engaged we are going to be in your application. I mean, it's just basically like that kind of a thing. If we can see that there is depth, that you've thought about what you have done while you were doing the sample of work. It could have been an assignment that you have submitted somewhere, but you've put in work. If we see that, we will take it seriously. If there isn't, it won't be. I mean, it's as simple as that. But yes, try and keep it urban if possible, if at all. If not, it's fine. But we want to see engagements, work, diligence, like, an interest, some depth in what you give as a sample of work.
Sudeshna, we have about last 5 minutes remaining, so I'm going to just club a few questions. Sure. So one is around the course. So the two questions are, one is how suitable is the course for development practitioners without an area of expertise, yet looking to shift their practice to urban? And the second is, how different is the UFP from a typical master's degree in urban studies?
Sure.
So these are two questions that were around the course. So maybe you can just answer them together.
Yeah. So the development sector question, absolutely. Put your application in. That sounds like, many of our fellows have sort of, been exactly in that kind of a position, that they have worked in the development sector or are interested in the development sector and interested in sort of moving to the urban. So absolutely, put in an application. The second question, sorry, Tanvi, what was the second question? The
second question was
about other kinds of degrees that are out there, right?
No, how is the UFP different from the master's degree?
Yeah.
From a master's in urban design.
Okay.
Sorry, I dismissed that question and it went, I couldn't figure it out.
Sure. So a master's in urban design is a master's in urban design. You study urban design. You study tools and techniques, theories, concepts. You look at examples. You become basically a professional who will then produce urban design projects. The UFP is sort of a liberal arts version of an urban studies kind of a program, where the focus is on interdisciplinarity, where if you're coming in as an urban designer, you will learn how to, sort of think about urban design within a much larger conception of what is going on in the urban. Like if an urban design intervention is made, what other things do you need to think about? What social factors do you need to think about? What economic factors do you need to think about? Finance factors need to think about. You don't have to do it yourself as an urban designer, but you do have to produce outputs with teams that will have all these other people as a part of your team, and your urban design aspect has to speak to all of these issues, and not just as like an urban designer thinking of social factors, but as an urban designer who's working with a sociologist and the kind of depth that a sociologist brings to talk about social factors as a part of the final design. So that's the difference, really. The UFP is looking at a sort of an integrated approach towards the urban, an interdisciplinary approach towards the urban, and it's sort of people who are at least familiar with the vocabulary across disciplines, rather than specialists in one aspect of urban work, like a kind of an urban practice, like an urban design thing. So that's the difference.
There's a question on whether the pandemic affected the internship experience of the current batch.
I am happy to say no. I'm happy to say that I was expecting it to have a very much more negative kind of an impact. We're sort of going through that process right now with our batch that will be graduating soon. And I'm very happy to say that they all have really nice internships. Most of them are like placed right now in their internships. So fingers crossed, it's gone really well.
I think we're out of time, but we have still a few questions. What I was suggesting, most of these questions are around stipend, eligibility, a sample of work. So we will be running these webinars every Tuesday and Thursday till 13th of April. So you can join any of these webinars and ask these questions. The next one is on Tuesday with Gautam Han at 5 p.m. He will also be talking about some of these elements, and I would request you to join there and ask some of the questions as well. To close, Sudeshna, maybe you want to take one last question regarding sample of work?
I feel like I haven't I, Tanvi?
Yeah, you have. Yeah. So then maybe one question that we had on how open is IIHS to candidates who want to use this platform to understand the exact field they intend to pursue or the kind of work they want to be part of in the field of urban development.
Yes, that's a good reason again to kind of apply to the UFP, where you want to sort of go from like understanding the larger picture and find your mode of practice within sort of that larger frame. There are definitely people who sort of come in with that kind of a perspective and find, the set of things that they want to work with and, build a trajectory out of that. So that's definitely something that you should apply to the UFP. Yeah. We are out of time right now, Tanvi, right? Like there was one question from the Instagram thing, which was about like, are there any circumstances in which the upper age limit could be relaxed? And I'm just really sorry to sort of say that we can't, like for logistical reasons and for various kind of reasons around the program design. That's one thing we kind of have to hold. And so the maximum age of 30, unfortunately, is something that we don't have, much discretion around. So we do have to kind of hold to that.
So thank you, Sudeshna. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And there were a lot of questions around sample of work, eligibility, admission, scholarships. And we have a specific webinar dedicated to this, which is next Thursday. So please do join and ask your questions. And please do fill your form in time and submit before 11, because we get a lot of applications. Most of them come towards the last day. And to just avoid technical issues, you should just make sure that you submit well in time. Yeah. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. It was lovely talking to you all, and I hope to see many of you in the class next year. So with that, take care. Bye.